So we've got a great agenda, and I have to thank Jonah, of course, is his brainchild. We have a number of people, and this is being recorded because a number of people can't make it. But there's real interest in this. Obviously, it's a growing field, and you guys are all players in it. So I think you can shed lights. I'll just throw a couple of housekeeping points. We just ask everybody, if you're not speaking, to stay on mute. This is not a webinar, so and we'll try to keep people muted who aren't. Again, we are recording it. We are also, just so some people know, our model is to have these events, but also we do raise capital, either for, I don't think anybody here is a client at the moment, but just so you know, our model, we have lots of events. Tuesday we did greenhouse and ag tech. Next week it's water. Then we legal, future education. We come back and talk about the virus, and you can, just so you know, we've got a history of going around the world, and now the world comes to you and to me. So it's a lot easier these days. So we mainly have family offices, institutional investors, thought leaders, and people who actually run companies, like many of you here. And this is that world. The families are looking for things to invest in, capital for their investments, talent, great network, a future crystal ball, and I will swing back and turn this over. I did have a little video we put together, but I think I want to keep things on track, Jonah. So I'm going to.
Well, it's not a video game, though.
No, it's not a video game. So, although we've talked about doing.
It's not.
So again,
one day.
Absolutely. So again, thanks to you, Jonah, and everyone here for taking the time to educate us, and we look forward to the discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Mark, and thank you to 361 Firm. And, most importantly, thank you to all my panelists here. You're all titans of your industry. You have plenty of other things to do. So thank you for taking the next hour and a half to spend some time with us so people can learn about, what we do in this industry. I'm sure a lot of you know me, but for those who don't know me, my name is Jonah Blake. My day job is I'm the VP of Blake Broadcasting. We do tons of news stories a day, esports included, and we manage linear channels. I'll also tell you another thing we're doing is we're developing a $300 million gaming and esports fund, which I won't talk about much here, but something we're super excited about. The reason I picked today, and you're wondering why would I pick today during lunchtime? Everyone likes to eat. Today is the day that the PlayStation 5 and Xbox are officially out at retail stores. If you're lucky to get one, please let me know. I'd also like one because I can't seem to find one. You probably found this morning that Sony and Microsoft had record-breaking numbers in pre-sale, and they're going to have record-breaking numbers going through the winter holiday season. So I thought, what better way to start this event than to acknowledge the fact that we're entering a new 7-year gaming and esports cycle that is really going to accelerate this space and the value of it, whether you're an investor or a consumer. So that's my little quick intro. Obviously we're short on time, so I'd love to jump into, our speakers, and I'm going to introduce each one individually. They're going to have about 7 to 10 minutes of speaking time. And again, thank you for coming. My first speaker, I don't even feel like I need to present him. He's a legend in gaming. He worked at Atari. He started in the 90s. Has worked with Hasbro Interactive, Info Games. He's currently the chairman of CSL, which is the Collegiate Star League, which is rolled up now, and Playfly Sports, which is one of the largest media rights holders of collegiate athletics, I would say, in the world. The only other competitor I would say is Learfield IMG, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard. Wim Stocks is, if you have any questions about college and athletics, even from the NCAA perspective, Wim is my go-to person. So with that being said, Wim, I'd love to give the floor to you and present what is going on at the CSL and how that relates to the college athletics industry as a whole. And
Thanks.
Mark, I believe you're also the screen share.
Well, good.
Yep.
Thank you. This is perfect. Thanks, Jonah. Thank you. And Mark, thank you for including me, and great to see Grant and Magnus and others. I think we've all shared panels, many panels in the past. So great to see you all here. Collegiate esports. Just to dwell a bit on what Jonah's introduction. Playfly Sports now. We were acquired in it was a private equity company financed the whole thing. Access Holdings out of Baltimore. The vision is to Playfly Sports is all about managing. It's not just collegiate rights, but it's also amateur rights in the traditional sports space. We were a perfect add-on, and the timing just couldn't have been better for them as esports became sports throughout the pandemic. What would have taken, I've said this to Jonah a couple of times, what would have taken another 5 years for the profile and the presence of esports to develop, all happened very concisely within the last 6 months because of the notion of esports becoming replacement programming for traditional sports. And nowhere has that been more evident than in the college space. Going into the spring when the pandemic hit, Final Four, March Madness completely blown up and canceled. Going into the fall, football programs in one state or another, a lot of uncertainty still. LSU game this weekend canceled. So what has remained a constant in college is that there are esports, and these esports events, the esports content, the esports leagues they will happen no matter what, largely because they're taking place virtually, and the same sort of, maybe not to the same size and stature and degree, but the notion that this programming is monetizable for colleges, not just in the competitive sense, but you add on collegiate curriculum, kids wanting to go to school. I was just on the phone with Eric Darr, who is a president of Harrisburg University, arguably the best esports collegiate program in the United States, and all the work that they're doing outside of competition to bring skill sets and to bring knowledge around esports for their students is truly amazing. So while we are, and I'll dive into this now, we are in many regards considered the NCAA of collegiate esports, largely because what we do is we organize leagues, we organize conferences, we put schools into those conferences, we engender competitions through league play, but also through one-off play. And I would counter that when someone says, "Oh, you're the NCAA of esports." I said, "No, we're really the anti-NCAA of esports, because we don't just build esports competitions through the athletic departments. That's what the NCAA is all about. As we built our business over the last 10 years, we've taken teams from, in fact, most of the teams come from student life programs, student affairs programs. Funding from those affairs with colleges is what has built collegiate esports into what it is today. And even today, there's student affairs program. There are STEM programming, STEM and STEAM programming that also support esports. Certainly, the athletic departments are now a coming source of support for collegiate esports, and it's not a bad thing, because that's where, as everybody knows, most of the money is generated for colleges through the athletic departments, big schools anyway. But we will be clear and pure to our mission that we will take teams. As long as you have a team, you qualify through our small bit of governance for competing in our leagues. We'll put a Robert Morris University up against an Ohio State. In many regards, Robert Morris will kick Ohio State all over the field, so to speak, in esports. But that's essentially what we do. We have 1,800 colleges and universities in our mix. Last year, we had over 11,000 teams. We have 13 different leagues. Every game, as you're probably aware, is a league. So whereas in traditional college sports, there's a basketball league, there's a football league, there's a tennis league, there's a hockey league. In our construct, our leagues are around League of Legends, around Valorant, around Call of Duty, around Counter-Strike, around Madden, around FIFA. So I think you get the analogy there. And within each league, we have multiple divisions. So you can be a serious player at the top. We call it our Star League, which is essentially Division I. But then we have casual leagues. We have more intramural style leagues, and the whole notion is to get as much participation in our leagues and our conferences as possible. Last year, we eclipsed, when we prize out at the end of the year, our monetization comes largely from sponsorships, also from fees that we charge the schools and the students to participate. This year is a free year because of the pandemic. We didn't want to have any obstacles for people for students to participate or schools to participate. So it's a free year this year. But as we garner sponsorships, we pool aside money for those prizes, and those are paid out at the end of the year. In our grand finals, our Final Four, and we went over $1 million last year. So really good footprint.
And can you talk about how you're integrated into Twitch? Because and again, I apologize, I'm not the master deck holder because I have some internet issues here. But I did emphasize that you are now really tied into Twitch, which is the next generation of broadcasting. If you can touch upon that a little bit, I think it's really important to highlight.
Well, thanks, Jonah, for the setup. Twitch.
And Wim, if you want me to switch slides, let me know.
Well, I'm not sure what's next, Mark. So you want to
Okay.
just move it ahead? That's fine. These are, you can buzz past this. This is just our growth over the last. We've had some great growth, obviously. This is. I sort of went through this. This is our structure, and we did add a women's league this year. This is the evolution, with great evolution of esports at the collegiate realm. More and more women wanting to play, so we created separate leagues. We've always encouraged women to play alongside their male counterparts for any of the teams, but there's as you're probably aware, if you follow the space at all, there's a fair amount of toxicity in the space. We do as much as we can to make sure that doesn't come into play when we're running our events or our leagues, but it was smacking us in the face last year. We really needed to create a safer place for women to play, and so we created leagues this year. We also just announced a great initiative with the HBCUs, if you know what those are, the historically Black colleges and universities. We have a big event we're going to announce on Monday for around homecoming for the HBCUs. So we're thrilled with that partnership as well. You can go to the next slide, please. Thank you.
Sure.
And I will, Joan, I'll get to your. This is I touched.
And I apologize. As Mark tells me, I will give you the 2-minute mark because I want to make sure other speakers get a chance as well, even though what you're doing is amazing.
I'll tell you what, I'll finish on the Twitch because that is an important thing. So we have I will describe Twitch as our angel. They have bent over backwards to support collegiate esports, not just ours, but others as well. Thank you. This is a good slide. And as you might imagine, by definition, a collegiate esports event is going to draw a lot less eyeballs than, say, a Call of Duty professional league match or an Overwatch League match or an NBA 2K League match. But yet we get the same kind of support from Twitch, meaning that instead of being relegated to one of the back pages and needing to search and look for the event, we get front page placement. It's their primary spot. They usually charge $75,000 an hour for this. We get it for free. And again, we're not the only beneficiary of this. Other colleges and high school organizations get this kind of support too. And really a great show of support from Twitch, knowing that Twitch is something new. People, these are kids who are in their formative days. They may not yet really have embraced Twitch. They may be on YouTube, they may be on Facebook Gaming, they may be elsewhere. But the fact that Twitch celebrates and acknowledges and elevates esports, collegiate esports programming in such a prominent way is a big part of. That's how we monetize. That's how we elevate the programs that we're involved with. That's the students love being on the homepage. They're the stars for the night. We run broadcast six nights a week on 2 different channels. So we're really thrilled with the Twitch support and couldn't be who we are and what we are without them. I would say they're in our back pocket, but they would probably say we're in their back pocket. So it's a very, very nice.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And Wim, thank you so much for explaining that. And I definitely want to reserve some questions for the end. But I'm going to go to the next group, Mark, if you can pull up the next slide. And I'm presenting them as a battery pack because they really are I think, honestly, more so great friends than they are great business partners. But maybe that makes for the best sort of relationship. So with that being said, I'm going to introduce Grant Johnson and Magnus. And Magnus, I'm going to butcher your last name, so just be aware. Lampanimi, I apologize. I just can't pronounce your last name. But Grant Johnson is the CEO of the Esports Entertainment Group on the NASDAQ. The ticker is GMBL. And Magnus is the VP of Vi Esports, or V Esports, which is their online gambling platform. And I will also interject and say they don't just do gambling esports, but they've recently acquired a number of companies where they're going to become event holders, media rights, administrators, and a number of other incredible things. So with that being said, I leave it to you, Grant, to sort of talk about that.
Thanks, Jonah. Thanks for having us. And I just want to correct something. This is the executive VP of all of esports products. So he's more, yeah. So, yeah, we for those of you who have followed us or aware of us, we went effective on the NASDAQ in this past spring in April, which was a big milestone for us as a company. And I think also as for the esports sector, as we were the first US listed and based esport gambling company. In fact, we're the first iGaming company, period, to list on that. So that helped raise the general awareness of the sector, because clearly once you get on the NASDAQ, you know larger groups, and Jonah, as you know yourself, coming from the banking side, you start getting on people's radar. Now, of course, to Vem's point, nobody could have imagined COVID. I don't think any of us in our wildest nightmares would have imagined such a thing taking place. But as we were sort of kibitzing a bit before the conference started here, it's a very short list of sectors that have benefited from COVID, and esports, to a large extent, has been one of the sectors has benefited because traditional sports were shut down for such a long period of time, and people like to be entertained and they like to play games. And when you're sequestered away in your home, you either watch TV or you go online. And as we overwhelmingly know, those under 30 go online. And when you're online, you can only watch so many YouTube videos. YouTube would hate to hear that, but after that, then you start playing games. And it's a great way to connect with people. I mean, esports is a very, contrary to previous popular belief that it's inclusive people in their basements. It's anything but that. It's a very social group of people. I mean, just look at this panel here. We have people from age 25 to, I hate to get specific, but into our 60s on this panel. And so so Vim and I are at, you can guess which end of the spectrum we're at. Either it's been a very hard 25 years or so actually, could you advance the slide for me? As as Jonah explained, our focus, we started out specifically focused on esports betting, but as we got into it, we recognized that esports is quickly expanding, and there's much more to esports. There's obviously the land-based tournament, there's the huge burgeoning intercollegiate sector that Wim just talked about, and that's going to continue to explode. And that's a huge part of the feeder system to make a successful, healthy industry. You have to have the feeder system, and that's going to be from the collegiate teams. I'm sure Wim would 100% agree with me. If you can't just have a top heavy, the 10 top teams, the 10 names that everybody knows. That cannot exist in any kind of a healthy long-term environment. You need that feeder system. So we recognize that as well. And so we started expanding out, and looking at other areas that we could play a part in enhancing the ecosystem. Clearly, gambling is part of entertainment. I mean, everybody here has probably either been to Atlantic City, Vegas, Macau, etc. Gambling is entertaining. Sports gambling has been around for generations. Some would say, it depends which side of the fence you're on. people bet because they're watching the sports. I take the position people are watching the sports because they're betting. Because when the big betting, took place, sports viewership, the big TV contracts definitely expanded. So did the salaries. So did everything else. I believe the same thing will take place in esports as the industry matures. Having said all that, we have a situation where, as you can see on the slide here, it's a huge, growing, overwhelmingly young audience, despite some of the attendees here. The majority is still in that, 25 to 34 is the real meat of this industry. They're affluent, they're educated, it's an under monetized section. Advertisers are trying to get access to this demographic. And it's also, from a gambling perspective, it's the ideal demographic. They've got disposable income. What's been missing, actually, you can advance the slide. In our opinion, what's been missing has been the regulatory elements. On the gambling side, numbers are up in gambling almost by default, really, because the numbers are up online. When they're online, they'll try, they play, they watch, they bet. So all the numbers are up accordingly, largely driven by the two factors of COVID and the pro sports being shut down. We saw in we own a sports book, Sports Nation in the UK, and we noticed that 55% of our handle was coming in from virtual sports, FIFA, Madden, because obviously traditional soccer and football, rugby, et cetera, were shut down. So people who follow sports will follow esports and bet on esports that are the virtual sports. And I'm not suggesting for a second that fans of Dota and League transition over. They don't, as everybody in this panel knows, and probably the larger audience. But just so there is two very distinct camps, it seems, in the esport fan base. There's, we'll call them the console players who, and virtual game players, and they'll play, Call of Duty and FIFA and Madden, et cetera. And then there's the League, Dota, Counter-Strike, Rocket League, et cetera. There's not a lot of crossover between those two groups. So the gambling product, also, we've noticed there's not a lot of crossover. Somebody who bets on the NBA will bet NBA 2K, but they won't bet Dota. And somebody who bets Dota or follows Dota won't bet NBA 2K. There's always marginal errors in there. So you have to have a large product offering, of course. And what we've seen in the gambling side is, as more credible players, back in about 4 years ago, there was most of the gambling was skin betting, and it was run by unregulated operators. And there was a big debacle with teenagers using their dad's cards to buy skins and then bet their skins. And this caused a huge blow up, a huge problem for some of the publishers when the parents started looking at those credit card bills and seeing their 14-year-old son had spent $15,000 on skins and bet them away. So it's good that those things, not good that they happened, but it certainly accelerated the need to eliminate that type of operator. So we're seeing better quality operators, better quality offerings, more betting options, and that has also contributed to the growth of it. Regulatory wise, 4 years ago, there wasn't a gaming commission on the planet that had any language for esports in their regulatory guidelines. I think it's safe to say that every single gambling commission is adding some language for esports. In the States here, I think Malta was first to do it as a tier 1 group. Isle of Man had it in there, but again, as a tier 1 group, Malta was first. In the States, I believe Nevada was first to do it, and Jersey is but second. And those are the two states that usually lead innovation in gambling, certainly online gambling in the United States, and it makes sense because of Atlantic City and Vegas, of course. So it's important from a regulatory standpoint that they get these guidelines in, because I think it's important for a healthy industry. And again, I'm talking about the gambling side, that you keep the less reliable operators at bay for the protection of the players and for the general health of the industry. We're obviously as an SEC reporting company, we're big believers and fans of a strict regulatory environment. Not that I'm a huge fan of paying outrageous taxes, mind you, but it does keep the shadier operators at bay. I think today, if we're all being honest, the most profitable operators are the gray market operators, and they're operating in environments and countries where there is no regulatory guideline. We pride ourselves on, as I say, being the first on NASDAQ, with reporting to the SEC, being audited, fully transparent, and getting those tier 1 licenses. There are other operators following that path, and I think that's important for having, again, the healthy environment. Now, just looking at our page here, I'm going to turn this over to Magnus because we're starting to get into his kitchen a bit, but we sort of break it down into a couple of categories. These are the companies, and they're behind me as well. There's a reason we've done it this way. We have with EGL, that's the online tournaments. This is the company you've seen us doing announcements with, and this is where the crossover comes with traditional sports. The traditional teams, the pro teams, they can't put those valuable fans in seats in their arenas, on their football fields. And they're trying to figure out how do they keep that fan engagement. The answer is esports. Clearly, everybody in this panel recognizes that and has for years, but it's, these contracts we're signing shows the convergence between sports and esports. In fact, I would say overwhelmingly, high 80s at least, pro athletes are also gamers. Because if we saw them going into their bubbles, they all had their Xboxes, their gaming rigs, their PlayStations, they all game. So that's the EGL tie-in with the pro teams. The Helix acquisition, that's land-based, because gamers don't want to stay in basements. They're in basements because there's nowhere else to go. The Helix gaming centers and others like them, other LAN centers, other esports centers, what WIM's doing with the colleges and universities, they like to gather. They like to be in these venues. So the online ties in with the land base. In the center where we all started, of course, we are developing and testing right now a player versus player betting product in conjunction with a gaming commission.
Grant, I apologize.
So
2-minute warning, just so you know.
Oh, okay. Well, actually, that's perfect because I Magnus is right there, and I know he's jumping at the bit to get into taking it. So actually, on this slide is probably the perfect place for me to make the handoff to Magnus because, as mentioned, he's Exec VP of all of our esports. So Magnus, why don't you take it from here, buddy?
Thanks, Grant. I think you stole some of the thunders I had
did.
when we talk about, but usually that's the case. But I think you touched on some important points, especially with the land duel and the land centers. We think that the land centers is going to be a little bit of the casino for the 25-year-old gamers. That's the place they feel they want to go to. They don't look for what we see as they don't go for that slot machines or find 400 free spin is the things they're looking for. It's actually that kind of a gamification, that thing that actually can work on the things of what they like to do is play games and that gamification set is in there. So that's where I think the LAN centers will come back, even if in Sweden, I might have a better internet connection at home than I actually go to the LAN center, but it's that thing you want to go and hang around and make sure you're playing with the right friends over there. And I think with the setup we have with different products, it ties well into that things also with the Helix also and with the circuit that actually creates that software that runs this, but also can create the different challenges to play to. And
perfect. Magnus, thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate. I want to reserve some type of questions because you guys own literally so many different properties. It would take another hour just to go over them. So that being said, I would like to go on to the next guest, who I love the work he is doing, and I believe John Linden is here because I know we had some errors in the link. John, thank you for coming. I really appreciate it. John is a veteran in the game development industry. He's currently the CEO of Mythical Games, which is a really amazing next generation gaming platform where they're integrating crypto economics and what we call NFTs, which are non-fungible tokens, with microtransactions in games that are not only economically really feasible and generate a lot of income, but are actually enjoyable to play. And the first game that they're building is called Blanco's Block Party. And John, I'll leave it to you. I feel like I don't want to take all of your time because you just have such a long resume of building great games.
No worries. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. So yeah, like I said, I've been in the game industry. This is actually my third kind of run at the game industry now. I started off as a studio head at Activision, so I was on the Call of Duty franchise. So we built 4 Call of Duties from the development side. So we actually built the game. We worked on a Skylanders franchise for a little bit. I ended up leaving Activision and I did a mobile game company. And we had a big game called Marvel Strike Force, which did about 200 million in its first year, which was a really nice first pop on the mobile side. And we sold that company to Niantic, the guys that make Pokemon Go. So Mythical is really my, kind of my opus of what I'm hoping to be my opus for the gaming career. And it's really kind of bringing everything together. So if you go to the next slide here, what I thought I'd talk about a little bit is kind of where we see the industry going and some of the new things we're seeing here. So I don't have control of the screen, I don't think, do I? No, I'll just have you guys.
Mark, can you switch to the next slide, please?
Oh, yeah, perfect. So I think what we've seen is if you look at a lot of the games that are out there and the brands that are out there, one commonality we've seen is that the games that are very player driven seem to have the most longevity, right? And it kind of makes sense. You give players control, you let them not only live in these worlds, but create and kind of take the worlds where they want. You're going to keep them in these virtual worlds for a long period of time. So you get the next slide here. I think it's actually just going to show the dates, maybe. Yeah, so it just kind of shows the dates they wrapped around here. But what's amazing is like
some of the slides might be cut out.
What's that?
I said I will just let you know some of the slides might be cut out, but generally they're there.
No worries, no worries at all.
Slides.
But anyway, you can kind of see the dates here are, have been, these games have been out for over a decade, and they really are having this new life of longevity. World of Warcraft even, they just relaunched after 15 years, which is kind of an amazing feat to have a game for 15 years and then start it over essentially. So if you go to the next slide as well, one more. So we really think what's happening right now is we have the next frontier of digital value being created, right? So if you think about collectibles in the physical world and things like that, there's a lot of collectability. There's a massive market that consumers like to collect. And we think that same evolution is rapidly coming to digital assets themselves. So you go to the next slide.
1 second.
Yep, no worries.
Here you go.
Perfect. So one thing we're seeing is that the industry in general has really shifted. It's made some really big evolutions in the last few years, right? Where we're no longer kind of go back one.
Yep. 1 second.
Okay, well, there we go. We're no longer just kind of a game developer, game producer, or game publisher consumer market anymore. We now are interacting with brands very heavily. We're interacting with influencers, right? Both of celebrities, influencers that are trying to hit their audience within gaming, as well as the gaming influencers who've now become celebrities in and of themselves. We have groups around esports, right? So esports is kind of this growing market as well. That we get very excited about as well. So I think these teams are kind of split between professionally playing and creating content as well. And then we also get excited about other groups like artists that might be super well known and have their own communities outside of gaming that we could give them a way to break into the gaming ecosystem. So people like Shepard Fairey or Cause or Kid Robot in our case, I think are going to be tremendous impacts of new stakeholders in the gaming economy. So you got the next slide here. So I think what we want to show is just kind of how some of these things could play out, right? So how could this play out in terms of influencers and esports teams kind of becoming invested into these games? Because we think with an economy, what can happen with this, and actually I'm missing a slide here. Yeah, did you guys cut a slide?
Yeah, I apologize. There was a compactness to the master deck.
Okay, cool. So anyway, the slide I had before this is basically one that basically said that what we've done at Mythical is we've really kind of built on 4 principles, right? The first one is really having the concept of legitimate ownership or safe ownership of assets. And we've been spending about 2 years now kind of building that out. So players can actually own the assets, digital assets themselves, and be able to sell them legally to other players and for real money. And that's something we've been really working on. And once you have that layer, you can go to kind of a dual selling economy, right? To where you have $170 billion being spent in the primary economies. But we think that once you have the ability for players to sell back and forth, we think that it could actually rival within about a decade the primary economy. So there's additionally potentially over $100 billion that could get unlocked from players selling to each other. And what we've been trying to do is really, how do you unlock that value? How do you think about how that gets distributed and how that gets transferred. And our view is basically that you start pulling out a transaction fee every single time it changes hands, and using that transaction fee to go back and compensate both the game developer, but also can go back and create or compensate the original creator, so that the original creators now have a true residual for the first time in video games. And we're really, really pumped about that, to where that could generate billions and billions and billions of dollars for creators, for esports teams, for influencers, brands, all that over time. So as you go, there are a couple examples here. If you click the button on the next one here. So this is a streamer, a Twitch streamer named Lyric, and he has 3 million followers, right? So this guy has accumulated 3 million followers in Twitch. And so there's some different ways we can work with them. And what gets exciting is it starts creating this closer relationship with the esports teams and with the influencers and groups like that, right? So Lyric could sell a character. We sell it in the store, maybe a pop-up store in our game. It sells for 1 or 2 weeks. He gets a cut of the sales of the primary. Great, pretty straightforward model, but that could really happen now with this blockchain asset. But what's really awesome about it now is when it leaves the primary sale, it's now tradable player to player. And that could literally exchange hands, a dozen times over the next 5 years, right? And what happens in our system is that Lyric will actually get a small cut of every transaction fee in the future now. So he has a true residual off this initial asset. And that gets really, really exciting. So Gary, if you go to the next one here, we've been working with Twitch now for quite a while, and they had this program called Twitch Drops, and Twitch Drops has been super influential for these streamers, right? What happens is you can link your account, and then as you're watching the streamer play a particular game, you can get digital assets that suddenly show up in your actual game account based on watching the streamer. And what that's done for streamers is it's increased their engagement heavily. It's increased their subscriptions, increased their ad revenue while they're streaming the game. What we've been working on with Twitch and with our system, what can happen now is, again, you can do a limited drop of 1 to 1,000. So think of like a baseball card set, 1 to 1,000. If you drop those out to 3 million followers, you're gonna have tremendous value created instantly. And with our tech, what can happen is that on the back end, once you've received one of these 1 of 1,000, they're instantly sellable to another player, or they're sellable in a marketplace. And those things could pop to hundreds of dollars a piece. And now the influencer is not only getting the benefits of the Twitch drop, but they're getting a residual off of that secondary as well, post their free giveaway. So it's a way now to monetize free giveaways, which we get excited about. The last two I'll go through pretty quickly here. You can go to one more here. Oh, sorry, one more. I think I got them backwards here. So the top right is an example of how you can use these economies combined with really interesting game design to do amazing stuff within the game itself, right? So the idea here is like, if I were to get that first character by buying it from the game itself, I was on Twitch and I got that second character, or I bought it from somebody that got one of those 1 of 1,000. I can use a game design pattern now within the game itself to, let's say we blend them together, craft them together, mash them up or something. And I could end up getting something that there's literally only a few available in the entire world, because I've had to get this combination of other pieces. And now that I could sell that. That thing could be worth thousands of dollars. And as I sell that again, one, as a player, I've gotten compensated for the chase, but the influencer is now also being able to benefit from the secondhand items that they've been able to produce into the economy. So we think those are going to be powerful exchanges as well. And then the last one is just kind of an example of doing something completely different, to where there's a one-of-a-kind character. You can tell that's Lyric. If you saw that character in the game, you know that's actually Lyric himself playing against you in the game. Or if you're watching him stream on Twitch, you can see something that nobody else has seen, right? So that would be something owned by him. It'd be the only one in the world. It could be auctioned off for charity or something like that. All right, if we go to the next slide. So what this kind of starts doing is it starts creating these new collaborations with artists and brands. And what I love about this slide is we didn't create any of this as Mythical Games, right? We didn't create these characters. These characters on the top row were all created by very famous vinyl toy creators. So these guys create vinyl toys for a living. We're building a vinyl toy game, and they're now producing content in our game on our behalf. And each one brings its own community with it. And that gets really, really powerful, because you can start seeing some reduced cost of acquisition, which is, one of the most challenging things for especially a new IP, but really for any IP in the game space. The other part, if you look at the bottom, these are kind of concepts. We aren't doing these necessarily yet, but you can see some items that Vans might do, or items that Beats by Dre might do. And what it starts doing is it brings in new revenue streams. It brings in brand validation. And again, there's so many different ways to reduce that cost of acquisition, as well as increase the longevity of the playtime. So we're really excited about where this could go with the artists and brands. You go to the next slide. Okay, so there's one other slide in there as well, but it seems like we passed that one. But the other idea there is it's basically the way retailers can work now. So retailers can actually start working. We used to do this with Skylanders, to where we would do physical SKUs, and Walmart would have their own variant or Target would have their own variant, or Toys R Us would have their own variant. And that's kind of died out, right? Because we're mostly a digital world now in the gaming space, but we're actually working now with groups like GameStop and Walmart to where they could have digital variants that are exclusive to Walmart.com or exclusive to GameStop.com. And using that blockchain tech we have behind the scenes, no matter where you buy it, it'll end up back in your account. So that gets really, really exciting as well in terms of like redefining how retail works with gaming again. And we're seeing just tremendous interest from the traditional retailer channels. Our first game is Blanco's Block Party. So we wanted to put out a game ourselves that we own and operate. We can pull all those levers of this new economy. How do you bring this concept to player-owned creations and content creation in a mass market game that we could hit to kind of millions of players? And that's our first game here that we're doing. Go to the next slide. Should be two more, I think. Oh, there's one more missing there as well. There's a mainstream kind of press one as well to where, so essentially what we had there is that what's really cool about this game is we've been able to achieve kind of this concept. I mean, technically this game is using blockchain behind the scenes. We don't really talk about it much, but that's kind of a new paradigm shift in terms of ownership, and players own all the assets behind the game. But we've gotten tremendous press from the traditional game media, and that's been really, really exciting as well. To be able to kind of cross the gap between mass market with this new innovation of ownership. And we're very proud of what we've been able to do so far. So the big news on this is that our game is going into beta next Tuesday. So we have about 4 or 5 days left before the game's going to be in players' hands. I will put a shameless plug out there. We have started selling Founders Packs, which is really cool opportunity to where you can come in and you can buy some of these limited edition characters. And then from there, you'll be able to go, you'll be able to own these and you have ownership of these limited edition characters. What we've seen as a game developer is that the fact that you have ownership, we've seen tremendous spend by a lot of players. We had somebody in Nevada that bought $30,000 of Founder Packs, which is, you see that every now and then in a free-to-play game, but we've never seen that before the games come out, right? And so what it reiterates is that concept of ownership, the concept that I, as a consumer, have the ability to sell this in the future. And I'm not saying it's a profit. I might sell it as a profit. I might sell it as a loss. I might just sell it as a secondhand to get rid of it. But I, as a consumer, now have the ability to make that decision. I have a tangible digital asset that I can do, and we're already seeing the effects of this. So if you had any interest, please support us. Go to blankos.com, pick up a Founders Pack. It'll get you in the beta next week on Tuesday. So thank you so much for the time. I know I rapid fired through this, but we're pretty excited on where this is going, and we will see this literally in less than a week. We'll have this in the wild.
John, I have to say, I love your energy. And for people who don't know much about game development, what he is doing is literally groundbreaking. I mean, you creating consoles is one thing with, better hardware, creating another shooter game. What he's doing is he is totally restructuring the framework of secondary market economies inside a digital ecosystem. To do that is unequivocally genius. And I will say that if I didn't have my own job, I would love to work for you because the energy you bring to an event is spectacular. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I really
So
appreciate
we're going to go to my next guest. Great. So we're going to go to my next guest. His name is Lance Mudd. He is someone I talk to all the time. I love his enthusiasm for esports and what he does in the space. And he is extremely well-knowledge in investments in esports. And surprisingly, while not many people do have this knowledge, policy advisory on the global governance landscape. So he deals with about 95 different governing bodies, aside from representing the United States Esports Federation, and building what he would argue against, but it's similar to the Olympics of esports. So he's going to represent the International Esports Federation in this talk for the next 10 minutes. So Lance, I leave it to you.
Yeah, it's great to be here. I don't know if you can hear me right now. I'm using a that one. The sound quality is all right. It's all right.
Actually, you're coming in a little choppy.
Choppy.
You may want to take your video off, Lance.
Give him a second.
All right. Can you guys hear me better now?
Yeah.
Perfectly. Thank you.
All right. Sorry about that. It's great to be here. It's good to meet you guys. Magnus, Grant, you made a great point. And John, love what you're doing. I think that you're right on the money with what you're looking to develop long-term. And Wim, it's good to see you as well. I'm here today to talk about the International Esports Federation and what we're kind of doing on a global scale, working with international government, national governments, National Olympic Committees and the international sports scene. You can go to the next slide, Mark. So this is just a graphic that I'm sure a lot of you have seen. We've gone over it today of the massive market that there is within esports. Obviously, a lot of different organizations and especially national organizations are seeing this space and the audience that's there and within their own country. And they're making it a real effort to really dive into this market and try and understand it better and working with the partners that already exist within their countries. So you can go to the next slide. So what I want to talk about is the International Esports Federation, which is a nonprofit organization that promotes esports, electronic sports that is, as a sport. We actually, this deck is a little bit old. We actually have over 91 national federations that are a part of the organization. A national federation is what you could view as a national federation of soccer. So say in the terms of FIFA, for the US team, which would go and sport athletes to go compete at the FIFA World Championships, or if FIFA which it is recognized by the International Olympic Committee, they would field the athletes that go and compete at the Olympic Games for the winter or for the summertime. We've been a WADA signatory, which is our anti-doping principles, since 2013, and our GIFE membership, which is the arm of what is known as sport globally, is where our application is in process to become an actual federation that is making esports its own sport. So you can go to the next slide. So as I've said, we've been incorporated since 2009. We organize an annual world championship. So the main thing that international federations have to do is they have national federations that sport athletes from their country. Those athletes then go and represent their country and compete at an annual flagship event, which in our case is our world championship. We, as a nonprofit and as a governing body, have general meetings in which that we go over standard policies and principles and accept new members based off of the full members who are already there. We host an annual Global Esports Executive Summit, which is much of the summits that you see here in the United States and abroad. But in our case, these are bringing together partners that are more inclined and focused to understand the space on the international governance base / a international sports base. And we've launched a number of projects with national governments that I'll go into later as well. You can go to the next slide. So to talk about the board and the composition of the board, IESF has a global board right now where we're in all 5 continents. We have been lucky to have also people on the board who are recognized by their Olympic Council in their region. So whether it's Kenneth Falk over in Asia, they are recognized by the Olympic Council of Asia, and they actually are the body that sports the athletes for all the esports Olympic related activities that go on over there. We also have the Sheikh over in UAE, who has been very critical to a lot of the new programs that we've been running, and I'll go into that later. And it's been really amazing to have such a global board as well. And our board member, Youngman Kim from South Korea, is a IOC delegate for the Korea nation, and it's great to have him on as well. You can go to the next slide. So with this said, let me explain a little bit more of the structure of how an international federation works with international federations, or kind of sport overall in a global sense. Typically, there are national federations recognized by a higher governing body or minister of sport within your country. So let's just call it government recognition. Those countries would then form an alliance with their region. In our case, it's Pan America. In the case of Europe, it's the European Esports Federation, which was just incorporated last year over in the EU Congress. And over in Asia, it's the Asian Electronic Sports Federation, which is already recognized by their Olympic Council of Asia. So once this global community comes together, they then join one international body in which they recognize as their international federation. You can go to the next slide. So with that said, I've already gone over this. This is much of rhetorical or already said information. The AESF is, of course, recognized by the Olympic Council of Asia. They oversee all of the governance within the region of Asia, and they also support their athletes to the world-class events that they have, where they're doing it with the Southeast Asia Games, which are the 3rd largest games behind the Summer Olympic Games. And they have been doing it for the past year, and they're going strong and doing very well. You can go to the next slide. Right here, we have the previous history of the events that we've run. So we've run 11 Esports World Championship with the actual 11th one going on right now, which is going on. It's supposed to be in Eliot, Israel in November of this year, but due to COVID, we had to push it online. So actually, we're running the first online version of our World Championship. And what's really great to do with these online formats and also the events that we run is Grant made a great point by, traditionally, sports people who are gaming are collaborating with people while they're at home. Well, I like to say that, sports breaks borders, but esports breaks borders while you're sitting at home. Esports has no borders. Also, when you look at it from a cost perspective, esports and gaming is an industry in which you don't go have to spend millions of dollars to go put on an event that can garner the same amount of viewership and also go and have some of the biggest impact in the region. I can give you an example. Last year at our 10th Esports World Championship in Seoul, South Korea, the winner was from Iran, and he was competing against Israel in the game of PES, which is made by Konami. If you know the region of Iran and Israel, there is a lot of heated tension. But still, you had the Israeli vice president at the time giving the medal to the Iranian player who had won gold, and you had the entire head of ministers for their specific departments from Eliot, who had flown out, or from Israel, who had flown out to South Korea to watch this happen. So it's been very interesting to see that, gaming and esports is one industry that really can bridge and break borders. And to gamers and younger people like myself, we don't see a lot of that political tension that is present in other age groups or in other sports at hand. So you can go ahead and go on to the next slide. Oh, well, that's it. So, I want to pose one question just for the Q&A later, because it's very interesting to kind of hypothecate and think about, is esports its own sport, or does sport own the digitized version of their sport? And when you think about games like Overwatch, Call of Duty versus FIFA, F1, and the others, depending on the answer, there's some interesting questions that get brought up onto what will be the space going forward. And I would like to ask that to the people who are speaking as well, and then hopefully we can speak about it in the Q&A. But thank you. Yeah,
absolutely. And Lance, every time I speak with you, I feel like I just have a totally new perspective on esports. For someone in my age group, I expect Lance over the years to have a very serious role managing in this esports industry, because he is extremely intelligent. And I almost feel like he's got that White House policy, sort of expression when I speak with him. So it's really, really great to have you. Thank you. So our next guest is supposed to be Jennifer Langton, but I think because there was complications in the link, I don't see her here. So in the meantime, I can go to the next speaker, who I think is fantastic. And the one thing I like about him the most is that he's actually younger than me. He's 23. His name is Jake Barford. He is a YouTube content creator. And as they say in my age group, he just got the bag. So he just landed a streaming deal with Facebook, where he is a premier partner with Facebook Gaming across the world. He's also an Ohio boy. So I know there's a lot of people here from Ohio. And so it was really interesting when I did get the chance to meet him, that he had that Ohio presence. So Jake, I don't know if you're here. I think I saw you. Do you want to take it away?
Hello, you guys hear me?
Yep, we hear you.
Cool, awesome. Thank you, Jonah. I appreciate it. I guess I'm here to give a little bit of a different perspective. The word influencer has been tossed around a lot today. I guess I could be considered an influencer. I like to use the term content creator a little bit more, because, I'm producing content daily, recording, editing. I'm someone who kind of does everything on their own. So just a little bit about myself. My primary role is a YouTube content creator. I'm pushing out content every single day on that platform, while also using some of the other platforms, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, to sort of grow my overall global audience. 170 million total views is kind of where I'm at across all platforms. I'm also an esport commentator. FIFA is sort of the main game that I've involved in. So everything that you kind of hear me talk about is kind of all based around the game FIFA. That's my sort of specialty. Through my degree, I'm just graduated college, figured I may as well use that for something, right? 23 years old. Yeah, as Jonah mentioned, just partnered with Facebook Game, which is really, really cool. I wanted to kind of briefly talk about how I sort of started all this. So I've been doing this for around 5 to 6 years. It started as sort of like a hobby. I got my start over on Twitch, which, again, everyone knows Twitch. It's been talked about a lot today as well. Where I was live streaming to obviously a lot smaller audience than what I had now. And over sort of the past 5 years, first year I grew to about 60,000 followers. Switching over to YouTube, that's 60,000 on YouTube. And then over the years, progressively just growing to where I'm at now. And as I'll talk about a little bit about my audience more and how I've grown this year specifically, especially with the whole COVID situation, has kind of helped me skyrocket a little bit. But yeah, I consider myself, I guess, knowledgeable in this field, and that I come from a little bit different perspective. And, I've been able to sort of grow and expand across this audience. So if you could go to the next slide, Jonah, the next thing that I want to look at is sort of the brands that I've been able to collaborate with. So obviously with sort of the views that I bring in, the audience that I have, I've been lucky enough to collaborate and work with some massive, massive brands. The Facebook deal was one that I just got about a month ago. So I'm now a Facebook gaming partner. And basically what I'm doing with Facebook now is bringing across my audience from all these other platforms, YouTube specifically, which of course I've grown over the years, and moving to Facebook. I still do my YouTube content, but I'm creating content that is specific for Facebook. And, obviously what they're hoping is that I can build up my brand on that platform, which is then monetized and, help them grow, I guess, sort of maybe a younger demographic, which is something I'll talk a little bit about later, is sort of my viewers and their age range, where they're from. A few of the other really cool brands I'm working with. I've done a few campaigns with Amazon, helping promote some of their videos on their streaming platform, different things with their sports platform as well. Adidas, I'm working with them currently right now on a project, where they're sending me some Adidas gear. I'm featuring it in my videos, generating views, linking them off in my videos and across all social medias. And then EA Sports is the big one, because FIFA is sort of my primary game. I am what is termed an EA game changer. So myself and a bunch of others work closely with EA on sort of their game development process, where, I'm providing feedback on changes that, I want to see in the game itself and what my audience wants to see using them, while also, getting access to the game early and a few other things so that I can sort of create the content, and it helps my channel with views and it helps my channel grow, but it also helps, EA better distribute their game, I guess I would say, in that, all these people are getting eyes on the game and they see their favorite content creators playing it, and, hence they go on and buy it. I've worked with all these other brands on here and a bunch more. These are just a few that I kind of really wanted to showcase. So the next slide that we're going to go to, I wanted to provide some numbers on what maybe you all out there, in terms of content creators, can expect for someone maybe around my size. And this is the graph from just the past 365 days. So, and this is views specifically is what we're looking at right here. So you can see the numbers up 59% this year has been really, really good for me. You can see kind of a big spike towards the middle. That's like peak lockdown. So that's when everyone is sort of inside consuming this content, and you can see it's just massive out. I was getting close to 250,000 views every single day, and that's people just constantly clicking videos. I don't have the exact stats on viewer retention, how many of those views are, someone clicking multiple videos or someone just clicking one of my videos. Watch time, 7.2 million hours of content, which is actually just a crazy number to think about, consumed over the past year. And yeah, so obviously COVID has, I'm one of the people who have kind of benefited from it, just because people are inside consuming that content. And one of the other things I wanted to talk about is sort of differentiating myself from esports. So what I do is esport related, but people aren't watching me specifically because I'm really, really good at the game. The type of content that I create is more on the entertainment side. Yes, I'm good at the games I play, but I'm not esport level. So there is that kind of differentiation between esports themselves, content creators. Yes, some content creators are professionals in the esport field, but I'm someone who is not, I play the game, I make entertaining content, but obviously I'm not at that pro level. One of the ways though I am involved in esports, and I've kind of been able to provide sort of a different view in esports, is the way that I'm an esport commentator. I've done some events. Obviously with EA Sports, I work with their global series, which is sort of their competitive event. I've done stuff with MLS, my hometown soccer club, football club, whatever you want to call it. I always get hate on whether to call it football or soccer, but in my hometown, I work with FC Cincinnati, doing some esport work for them. And one of the cool things that I think that I provide to esports is that, you know, I come across knowledgeable in the field, and when I'm commentating on these events and working with this, I'm a recognizable face. Whereas, you know, you may be watching an esport event and you just see these commentators, you know, who are they? Whereas it's really cool being able to work with them, because people will tune into these streams and, you know, they'll see someone who they know, and they're talking about the esport that they're watching. And, you know, I'm a commentator, I'm an analyst. I think that's a really cool just differentiation I provide in the esport field. And then we can move on.
Jacob,
Yep.
on that, did you know that there's an
Yep.
FC Cincinnati owner?
Yes, I did.
on
Yeah,
the-
we've talked a little bit briefly. I think
Okay.
he may be in here today, but yeah, we've talked a little bit. Really, really cool. Yeah, like I said, I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio, born and raised here. Yeah, and I'm just kind of, I don't know, getting started and hopefully growing this, you know, growing my channel, helping the industry out in whichever way that I can. I did want to showcase a few of my demographics as well in terms of who's watching, which should be on the next slide. Just to show the different ages. So my viewership is the 18 to 24-year-old, 36% is a little deceiving, because the way YouTube works, a lot of people will make themselves over 18 so that they can have access to specific features. My content is for all ages. My channel is very, I'd say, G to PG rated. So, but people will make those accounts. I'd say my main viewership is that sort of 13 to 21, I think, is where my main viewership is. And you can see I'm from the US, I'm from Cincinnati, but because what I do is FIFA related, I have that large following in the UK, and I really do have a global audience. So you see the UK, USA, India, Ireland, Australia are my 5 top nations, but I'm reaching over 200 countries, I would say, at least, in terms of views. You know, some of the ones down towards the bottom don't get many views, but I get views. You can look and click the see more there. You can on this slide, but I could, and I'll look at nations I've never even heard of on there. It's really crazy, the reach that people like myself actually have. And then obviously being FIFA sports related, I have a larger male audience, but that's a little bit about myself and kind of what I do. Here's my channel if you ever want to take a look.
Great. Jake, thank you so much for coming on and speaking about how you generate content. It's extremely important for esports and gaming in general, because as most of you know, gaming is now new Hollywood, and Jake is the new celebrity of new Hollywood. So thank you. Jennifer, I just saw you join slightly like a minute or so late, so I apologize. You had the 1 o'clock slot.
No problem.
But, you know, you may be the last speaker, but you're also incredibly important. So if you don't know who Jennifer Langton is, she is the Senior Vice President of, Health and Safety Innovation for the NFL. So I'm sure everyone knows what the NFL is. And I want to thank Charles Way, who brought her along. Charles is amazing, and every time I speak to him, I always feel good. So that being said, Jennifer, if you'd like to take some time to talk about what the NFL is doing in health and safety and technology, just tell us a little bit about that. And then what you guys are doing in esports. I know you're doing a lot with EA, obviously Jake is too.
Yeah, good afternoon all. Charles Way, thank you for the invite. I see your name there. Unfortunately, I don't see your face, but there he is. There's that smile. So Charles and I have quite a few things in common. One, we went to UVA together. Two, we worked at the NFL together, which he is not only an incredible athlete, he is very intelligent and one of the best people that you will meet personally. But we had knee injuries. And so I blew my knee out playing lacrosse at UVA. And Charles had how many knee injuries, Charles, over the course of your career? So it is something, he's still on mute, that we had in common. And to bring that forward to today, yes, my name is Jennifer Langton. I'm the Senior Vice President of Health and Innovation here at the League. But truly what my job is to manage all of our engineering and innovation efforts to reduce injury. And so we use all the assets that we have available to us. Two of the key assets that, I came into this space, and I'll give you a little bit of my background and why gaming has been instrumental really to my career and my learning of business. But, we use video and we use data to understand how injuries, being mechanism of injuries, happen on our field in a very sophisticated way. We use biomechanical engineers, which are world-renowned and elite, to help us to review those videos and really understand how the injuries happen on our field so we can make changes. And when I say make changes, we see things in video like concussion, behaviors that exist like lowering the head, play type and/or plays that are the highest risk of injury to our players, which help us with data and video to support with our competition committee rules changes. So over the past few years, you've seen rules changes to our kickoff, you've seen rules changes to our punt, you've seen formation changes. And the reason why those changes come in is because they are the higher rates of injury. And so we want to, of course, increase performance for our players and keep our sport very active, but we want to reduce injury. So we've had incredible success over the past 5 years with a reduction of concussion because of those video reviews and because of efforts with an engineering roadmap that we call. But 2 years ago, we had a 29% reduction of concussion across the league, and we've maintained that over the past 2 years. So bringing that forward, we have structured a deal with AWS, and I'm going to tie this back to gaming. And what that deal is with AWS is for all the videos that we have reviewed extensively for concussion, it's a very manual effort. And if we could use, sophisticated technology today, a sophisticated technology, if computer vision, pose estimation, we don't have those efforts here. And so we structured a deal last year with AWS so we can take our engineering approach on what we have done for concussion and apply that to all injuries, more specifically lower extremity injuries, Charles Way, which make up 60% of all of our injuries at the NFL. Concussion is a small proportion of that. And so here with my, and I will get to my background, but now what I'm doing with AWS is they are replicating what we've done with concussion with computer vision. And there's a tremendous opportunity to start to work with EA Sports. And the reason why is because for that computer vision and pose estimation modeling that we do, so it's sophisticated artificial intelligence, EA Sports employs, as you know, realistic player motions. And it's very well documented, and there's a sophistication behind the engine on coding there. And if we could tap into the player motion that they do, so it's, motion tracking algorithms that they have with such sophistication, if we can take that modeling and integrate it with the modeling that we are doing to capture player motion, then we hope that we can predict injuries. And we've had great success with now a helmet detection model, which is the first time anybody's done a helmet detection model we've done and accomplished this year, which we're going to showcase, at Combine. But EA Sports is something that, and I'll get to, again, my sports background, my gaming background. But here, it's really interesting to me how player motion and body orientation for the precision that EA Sports has for the athlete will help me in health and safety. And so that's something, it's very different. It's a very different way in which you can take a look at estimation techniques on how we could hope to predict injury with such sophistication, but it's a very different mindset on collaborating and working with EA than I have done back to my Atari days. So Wim Stocks, I see you right next to me. I do have to say hello to Wim because I'm just going back to my Atari days. So prior to coming into the NFL, I worked at Atari. I had the pleasure to work with Wim. He was our head and director of sales for a time being before he parted and left us. But when I had started at Atari, we were about 600 employees in the US. I started in finance there. And when I left, we were 38 employees in North America. And I was named CFO of North America. So as you can see, we were a public company. We had delisted. We became a private company. But really, you know, it was one of the best jobs that I had had because of my learning and my growth there. So I had gone through a complete restructure of that company where when Wim was selling titles and the big titles like Test Drive, if you remember that one, Wim, we had produced it, we had manufactured it, and we had licensed it out, you know, to the market. When I left, we were a pure licensing business. So why was I attractive to the NFL was because I understood licensing. And the reason why I was hired to come into the NFL was they were looking to reshape their apparel strategy. And with that apparel strategy, they had Reebok on field for the past 10 years that secured all the rights for apparel, product head to toe, hat, you know, all the way down to, you know, your pant leg. And so we restructured that business, grew at about 228%, bringing Nike and New Era in. Then I took over the international growth strategy. And here's when First Gaming came in. So when we were looking to build the international strategy, we had one game in London at that time that they were testing. But when we were looking to really sell, meaning build our brand there, it was not consistent with building the brand here in the US. And the reason why is because our brand was known in Germany because we did recruit some players there, but you know, in Asia, as well as the London market, if you didn't have live games there, it was hard for them to understand our sport. So one of the critical things in modeling the growth of the international strategy was in fact Madden. And the reason is because you had so many gamers internationally that knew our sport because of Madden. So one of the big growth drivers was how do we, and it really, you know, the success, if you bring it to the current state, last year with, you know, within the NFL, and please note that I'm not as close to, though I, you know, I follow it, I'm not as close to the EA business here anymore. But last year, my understanding and knowing in Rogers press conference, you know, was we had EA Madden had his best, most successful year last year with the NFL. So they're one of our longest franchises that we've ever had, over like 24 years of business in a licensing structure with the NFL. And the reason why they really had that growth was not only for EA Sports, because they took a lot of the gameplay and they made it more casual. And when I say made it more casual, you're very attracted to the avid fans, but think about to get that international growth strategy when people are really starting to understand your sport. If the game is that difficult to understand and play, you're not going to attract as many of the casual fans. And so the critics, you know, had really scrutinized the game, being avid fan critics last year. But it's interesting, at the time that the game was critiqued by critics, that the play type wasn't as sophisticated. It was also the biggest growth year for the franchise. And the biggest growth year for the franchise was because it tailored more to the casual fan, therefore increasing again our international expansion with that game. Now, it's not just EA Madden, you know, that really was the, you know, was a driver for our international expansion. We now have 4 games, depending on the year, exception of this year completely, because we're not playing international games. But EA Madden, having live games in territories now in London as well as Mexico are significant growth drivers there. So we've seen our international markets truly grow, but the driver has been EA Sports as well as flag football in those markets. So a really interesting compilation, and I know I'm throwing a lot at you, but just different ways for which, yes, I know the licensing business. Clearly, I do know sports, you know, going back to playing in my days at UVA. But 2 different unique ways that I really have seen gaming and sports drive models and show great potential with different utility outside of gaming. One, the international growth strategy on how interesting it was to grow those markets and attract new fans. And second, now, because the sophistication of the modeling behind the precision of player movement, how I think that that is a huge potential to really drive what we are doing with pose estimation, meaning simulation models of our players, so that we can look to do prediction model and reduce injuries. So, you know, I'm more than happy to take some questions, you know, and leave it. I didn't do slides because I wanted it a little bit more discussion based, but I'm more than happy to take any questions, comments, hear from women, say hello.
Jennifer, I just have to remind you that the head of gaming for the NFL used to work with us.
I know, Rachel. Yes, I do know. I think she was shocked when I reached out to her this year and I said, we have tremendous success with AWS. I'm going to throw something at you here, but I plan to use EA much differently than we've used them before from the NFL to reduce injury. So I've been working with her pretty closely over the course of the past 2 months.
We are very involved in Madden in the competitive scene, and we're about to announce something on December 1 that will be the biggest Madden thing we've ever done. So, and Rachel is helping us along with Matt Marcoux and Andrew Echinatku at EA. They're the leads on the competitive gaming entertainment side for EA. So,
Awesome.
So it's fun to get this circle back together again.
Yes, it is. Wim, it's wonderful to see you.
Likewise, Jennifer. Thank you.
And you too as well, Charles.
And Jennifer,
Go ahead, Jonah.
Charles,
I'll talk to Jennifer later. I know you're short on time.
I have all the time, you know, in the world. And Jennifer, thank you so much for coming on. Just the wealth of knowledge that you have, combined with the fact that, you know, of all the sports, you know, associations, the NFL is so far ahead in sports and technology in gaming. I mean, when you go look at the NFL, they are way ahead on esports and gaming in general. If you go on Twitch, they hold a lot of their Thursday night football games, I believe it's Thursday, on Twitch. And now you got gamers like me or like Jake who are watching games all the time on there, clicking the channels per se in this new world and watching those NFL games simultaneously as we're watching another streamer, because quite frankly, we have ADD at our age and it's just a natural progression. But now we're ingrained in the experience of the NFL. And on top of that, you guys hired like Nick Merckx, Tim the Tapman, some of the biggest streamers on the platform as broadcasters for the event. So now I'm like, oh, like that's the guy I watch play Call of Duty. I want to watch him commentate on football, and you never know what he's going to say because it's, you know, it's not a linear channel. It's got a lot more flexibility to it. So, you know, what you guys are doing at the NFL is just incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Thank you.
So, you know, touching on this, and then we'll go to Q&A, you know, some of the guests are probably wondering, you know, why did we go through this step by step with the slide decks and the various industries? And what I wanted to show today, obviously with consoles releasing today, is that esports and gaming is not a new business. It's actually very much matured and it's very complex. And there are many ways that you can make money in this space. You know, whether you're John Linden, who's an absolute genius creating the next generation game using cryptocurrency, or you're Jake Barford, who owns the audience and will drive that audience to that game, or Lance, who's a policy advisor and deals with some of the biggest people in their local governments, or Wim, who is, you know, literally changing the collegiate sports landscape as we speak. Everyone here, and then Magnus and Grant, who are changing esports gambling here nationally and abroad in the UK. While they seem like they're very independent sectors, they all play in a very neat and elegant orchestra, which is the gaming industry. And that's what I wanted to show here today. So, you know, thank you guys for coming. I'll definitely leave this open to Q&A at this point, if you want to start that.
There were a few questions in the chat, Jonah, if you saw it.
Yeah, so I saw one that Jim sent via email. I'm gonna leave that last because it's probably the most important question that I want to get to at the end. But Denise Broder said, akin to the concern for ethics as an integral part of the development of AI, or I apologize if I'm saying that incorrectly, is there a consideration for mental wellness as an integral part of the development of gaming? Meaning, given the addictive nature of gaming. And I know I saw John Linden wanted to comment on that. So John, if you'd like to take.
Yeah, I'm
take
happy,
the floor.
happy to. I got a few minutes left here. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's definitely a big challenge for the industry. I think there's really kind of two sides that we've seen. We've seen one is frankly the realism of games is kind of something that people talk about a lot, especially from the Call of Duty side. We got a lot of that of like how real is too real. And I think, again, I'm not going to address that one as much. I'll let Activision deal with that one now. But I do think there is a point that you have to be careful of in terms of both these worlds. I think what's great is we are seeing kind of a resurgence of these kind of cartoony games, which I think is really interesting. So there's a lot more. You see Fall Guys recently. There's one called Party Animals. We have our game coming out. There's a couple different ones coming out, which is great. But the more problem I think is around that we try and think about is the loot box mechanics. I think loot boxes are very, very dangerous. We've seen this before. We've seen this to where people will drop, I mean, even the new game right now, Genshin Impact, there's been people that have spent $2,000 on that reroll to try and get a rare asset that's dropping at less than 0.5%, right? And I think that's a dangerous pattern. We got to be very careful. It does create kind of addictive personalities and addictive patterns. So that's one thing we're staying away from for a couple reasons. One is that we are trying to create the ability to cash out assets. And one of the challenges is obviously if you take an asset to where you can buy an item of random chance that you can sell the outcome of, that actually is technically gambling in pretty much every country in the world. So we're staying very much away from that. I think it's something we're seeing more and more studios think about. I think it'll be replaced with other opportunities to where it almost is like adopting a page out of the sneakerhead culture. And that's something we love, is to where it's like, what it is, it's all about scarcity now, right? So how it is. It's either on sale for a day, a week, a month, season, whatever it is. But once it's gone, it's gone. And I think that mentality is going to shift a little bit to, I think, a better consumer choice over time. So it's something we've been thinking about. And again, I think it's definitely that loot box culture is it's getting cracked down on too in several countries as well. But that's something I think most developers are looking at these days. I hope that helps.
Yeah, I would chime in and say that I think the ethics of the moral dilemma will also be based on territory, right? Like in the US with loot boxes, the courts, aren't really looking at it so much yet. They will eventually. Places like the Netherlands and Australia take it very seriously, or Belgium included, where it actually affects the revenue that's being driven from a number of game publishers. So I think the idea of the loot box issue and the addictive qualities of the loot box is probably another decade worth of deliberations in the court before there's a real understanding of how the industry is going to handle that. Because the U.S. is going to have to be a main driver in order to facilitate, global unity on the matter of loot boxes. Yep. And I would also say that loot boxes are a generalist term because it's really what comprises a loot box. And so in gaming, as John Linden would know, there's a term called RNG, which means random number generation. And the big problem with some of these loot boxes is they don't expose the RNG limit. So if you want a $5,000 or $500 character, you don't know what the odds are that you're going to get that. So I think the first step will be emphasizing what the RNG generator will be in those loot boxes.
Yeah, some of that's being enforced now. Luckily by Apple and Google, they're starting to enforce that a little bit more. But yeah, I think then there is a state of Washington is starting to crack down on loot boxes. I think they're the first of the 50 states that have really started investigating it more. But it is a challenge, and I think it's something we have to watch for as a long-term effect on the industry for sure. So.
Isn't EA also hit by the FUT packs they have selling that has that as a random number change? So what's going to be there? Jake, you know more about that. The FUT packs they are selling. I think that's also, they've been hit by that. I think they're actually being sued also. Not sure if that's in the US or somewhere in Europe. That's
they have, yeah. In particular, I think FIFA Ultimate Online or Ultimate Team was the big one they have. It's really like trading packs of cards. It is very muddy territory. I think it's hard to say, well, how is this different than baseball cards that are physical, right? I think it really comes down to the digital aspect of it, right? You can literally mint these forever without any concern, right? So I think that's the concern that it's going to play out. I think it'll change though. I think that's what's beautiful about it. I think it's one of the things we get so excited about is game developers, they love having new tools to play with, right? And if we can introduce new concepts and new ways to monetize that maybe aren't as predatory, frankly, and I hate to use that word, but it's kind of what it is a little bit. If you can have new concepts out there they will try it, you know, and if it works for them, they'll definitely move around on that. I can't think of any developer out there that's like, I absolutely love loot boxes. It's the greatest thing I've ever come up with. It's more about that's what works to monetize their game so they can put out more content for players, right? So it is. I mean, it's kind of this gotcha. I mean, it started frankly a lot more in Asia and things like that, but it's something we watch for, I think, as on the development side pretty heavily.
What I think,
and I would say, and then I want to get to the next question. I'm sorry, please, Magnus, go.
all right, what I say, I mean, what that touches on is actually also the regulations. How the governments aren't really following or this 4-step as gaming are is pushing that boundaries. It takes a little bit longer time for regulations also coming in there and, as I said, putting that in there. I think government in the future needs to be more agile and more in the forefront of things happening there to make sure that these things happen. As I said, because you go back just a few years, you had that whole skin spatting, Valve put those things, people was underage, like 12, couldn't bet with skins that they bought somewhere. So I think those are the things that really needs to be taken care of.
Great. And I know John Linden has to go off because he's going to go make the next great game. And I cannot wait to play the beta, by the way. I'm not even joking. I'm so excited to play that game. It looks amazing.
Well, it's a private beta. Day one of private beta. So let's set the expectations on that. There'll be bugs and all that. But no, we're excited to get this in players' hands. It's been a passion project of ours, obviously, for a couple of years now. So it's exciting. So thank you guys so much. I'm so sorry I have to take off, but I unfortunately have another commitment. So thank you again.
Jonah, let me ask a question because this is recorded and will go out to our network of investors. Just if you had ways to play this esports momentum that we expect, whether it's venture or partnering, but just particularly if you're in venture, I'm thinking, or maybe even private equity, what are the opportunities, the risks and the opportunities is the
risk and the opportunities of investing in esports? That's a general question. So I'll quantify it in a number of ways.
Everybody might answer that from their perspective.
Yeah, so I'll do my time. Yeah, so, I will say that I think depending on the team, there are plenty of good teams, but I think investing in, I don't know if you can, there it goes, in esports teams is very risky for the most part. I don't know. I'll let someone else answer because I think I'm having a glitch and I don't want some glitch to come up. So if someone else wants to answer.
It's wider than esports too, gaming. And,
yeah, so I would say, didn't know if someone was saying something.
Sorry, I was just going to add in from my perspective, and you started, Jonah, you started down a good path that teams, the pro teams, there's a gold rush when all these leagues were being formed, especially the franchise models. And they're not necessarily, are they bad investments, but I think so much of the opportunity around professional teams has sailed. But what is needed in esports, and this is what we embody in the collegiate side, is not just the collegiate side, but is infrastructure. We need to build funnels in esports to help players understand what it needs to take what it's going to take to get from point A to point B, and ultimately to become a pro, if that's in fact what they're aspiring to do. There's so much opportunity in technology I will encompass so much in infrastructure, but there's events, there's technology, there's media, all of this coming to bear to help build funnels that are understandable, clarified. If you're a 6-year-old baseball player in the United States today, you know what it's going to take to get to the major leagues of baseball. If you're an 8-year-old FIFA player, we'll focus on FIFA. You have no idea, and I'm talking about the video game. You have no idea what it's going to take to be a pro. All of those paths, those funnels, those ladders, all of the clarification continues to be important to the space, and the more of that forms, the more support it's going to have for building esports even to a larger entity and dynamic than it is today.
I would agree with that. And I really think that there's a real understanding for future investments and technology and data that is harnessed using esports gameplay, whether that's live, whether that's VOD. There is a real treasure trove of data that could be accessed for advertisers there. And if you are involved in a company that can harness that data and, you know, sell it on the market or use it for advertising, there is, you know, it's like sort of like untapped oil. There, you know, Facebook is Facebook because of data, and in gaming and in esports, that will exist here as well. So I'm bullish on that. I will say, Jack Wine asked, what are the best 3 recommended public companies in which to invest in order to have a presence in esports? I don't think I can answer that based on what I'm doing. I don't think I'm allowed to answer that. So I will leave that to the panel, because I will say that we are doing some stuff there.
Yeah, I could take a stab at that one a little bit. You know, that question gets asked a lot, and I think that you have to look at esports in a couple different umbrellas. You know, esports is the competitive side of gaming, but again, it is part of gaming overall and video games overall. So from a hardware perspective, obviously you can see the run that AMD has been doing. NVIDIA has been going on a run since 2013 as well. But really look towards what's going on in cloud gaming. Cloud gaming is going to be the next frontier, especially with 5G, of the major investments that some of these big firms are going to do. And mainly that war is going to be fought out between Amazon with Luna, Google with Stadia, and Microsoft with what they're doing as well. And part of that vision with the GameStop acquisition is going to be forwarding that cloud gaming possibility. So, you know, I think that a lot of what I call the big boys are always going to be involved in the space. You can have a disruptor like a Unity technology that builds kind of the future of video game development and what's going to be happening. But the space is going to be really moving towards that cloud gaming space within competitive gameplay as well.
I mean, I want to touch on the point you said on data. I think the data company the data is going to be new all, and there's so much data in video games and esports. And I think companies that can work with data and find that data and have that and present it in a good way. I mean, if you look at how do you find new players? I mean, why do you find them? There's no stadium to go to. How do you need to find them? And then I think AI can really play a good way where you can find those players and doing that, and also scout them and get out of those kind of things. So I think there's been things happening with the FIFA games, and it's also happening with the NBA 2K games, like Genji Analytics has been doing it there also. So I think that's now I'm self-promoting what we are doing there, as I said, with Genji Analytics, the Helix centers and GT Circuit. There's a lot of data coming out that can be used to do that. So I would say data is finding companies like that takes care of that.
100% agree. It's the foundation, especially when games are going free to play, because they make more money. You know, the middle class is only going to spend $120 a year on average on buying video games if they're $60 retail. But if you have Fortnite, Call of Duty, Warzone, you know, every game under the sun going free to play, you get people spending $20 every other month or every 2 months, because in their mind, they don't understand that they're actually spending more. And so when it's free to play, what are you sacrificing? You're sacrificing your data. It's the same position. So I actually see social networks, including Facebook, which is what they're doing with Oculus. They understand this proposition, which is why every big social network is going to create their own gaming devices. And like Lance said, especially cloud gaming. So the two are really tied together in a very interesting way. I also think there is a value in subscriber gaming, where this is more the upper middle class to the wealth class model, which is people want to sample, you know, like they're at a market, they want to sample games, they want to sample entertainment. And so there's going to be, for example, Xbox Game Pass is going to go the Netflix route where it's $15 a month, but I'm going to get hundreds of titles that I can access yearly when normally I would only buy 2 or 3. And based on data that I've seen, which you can find publicly online, that subscription service is growing really quickly year over year.
I think it's all about how you tap in. I think it's how you tap into the consumer's wallets. I mean, the companies that can tap into that in different ways, several times. I would say it's important to do that. They can tap in on as I say, cloud gaming, buying in-game currencies, all those kind of things, is subscriptions, or betting is one of those things where you tap in. I think that's an interesting company that can tap into several times into consumer wallets, not just 1 or 2 times.
Yeah. And there's 2 other questions. One was posed by Jim that I think is critically important, that I think this panel can answer. And I'm going to paraphrase it because it was I'll make it simpler. The question was, when COVID is over, assuming it's over summer 2021, will the gaming market still be stable or will there be a drop? That's a really important question to ask. I mean, especially for us at our work. So I'll pose that question to the panel. I'll give my 2 cents. I'll say no, because the hardest thing to do is to bring a device in your home and have that as a part of your routine. I know when I have my, hopefully soon, PS5, if I ever get it, in the home, that's going to be a part of my nightly routine. I'm not going to want to watch Netflix that much. I'm going to want to game. And so the one thing that's always resistant to a change in economics is really entertainment, because whether it's a depressed economy or a fruitful economy, I want to be entertained. And gaming is really no different. So I'll pose that question to the panel as well, because I think it's a paramount question to ask.
I agree with you. I think, as I said, entertainment is still going to be a part of whatever people want to do there. They want to be entertainment. And even I think what COVID did was maybe not actually, it would actually speed up things. Things that's always going to be happening in 3 years actually happening instead in 6 months instead. So it goes faster and faster. And gaming will always be at that forefront, driving technology, changing behaviors and all that. So instead of taking 3 years to happen, we did it in 6 months instead of gaming. So I don't see it's going to drop. Maybe it's going to pan out a little bit, but it's still going to be growing in there.
Yeah, and even if it pans out, it'll still reach a new level that won't decrease, because once the hardware is in the home and you're on a plan and that plan's effective, that's what Netflix and Facebook and all these companies know, is that people don't like changing their routine. So if you create a system that takes actual effort to leave that routine and change it, they're probably not going to go anywhere, which is why Netflix has so little new content, but still growing in value and monthly subscription fees, because they know no one's going anywhere.
Look at what Microsoft's doing with the new Xbox. It's actually an entertainment system. It's not a gaming console. It's an entertainment system that adds a lot of features in. So it's not just gaming. You watch Netflix, you watch Twitch, you can do other things. It's a social platform, not just a gaming console. That's what they took that away from being with, like the Xbox One was just pure console. Now it's actually an entertainment device that put in your living room. So it's going to stay there for a long time. You're going to use it. So yeah, that's what I think they've done the right thing with positioning it as an entertainment system compared to a gaming console.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I will tie back to Jake, by the way, because I remember we talked about data and advertising about 2 minutes ago. You know, once we figure out how to harness that data, which I know there are companies that are already working on, it's going to be up to celebrities like Jake Barford to execute that data. And so what's going to happen is, yes, linear channels will still be around, but YouTubers like Jake, or content creators, I would say, because he's not just on YouTube, content creators like Jake Barford are going to be the ones executing those advertising deals, because he has more audience penetration than any network could ever have. It's just the bottom line, because people follow personality. So, you know, Jake Barford's 23. By the time he's 30 and still doing content creation, and he has millions of subscribers, he's going to be in really a lot of control as to what sponsors he can take, what advertising limits he can have on his channel, and how that data can be harnessed into dollars.
Jake, should we be investing into you?
I mean, I think it'd be always great, not even myself, but just content creators in general. You know, I showed some of my demographics and, you know, the views that I've been pulling in, my audience. And I think that if people want to invest in creators, you know their audience. So if you want to invest in a specific audience, the creators have all of that data already from, you know, I have it since I started on who's watching, from where, everything. So it's a really great tool to use. And a lot of people, a lot of viewers really trust these creators, and, you know, what they say and, you know, what I say, my viewers will trust. And if I, you know, say, hey, do this, a lot of them will, you know, like I said, with Amazon, go check out that Amazon show. Where with Adidas, you know, they see me wearing these new Adidas shoes or, you know, clothing in my videos. They'll want to, you know, go out and, you know, follow my lead, follow my example. And again, it's not just myself, but every other content creator out there. It's just, you saw some of my numbers just growing so much, especially with COVID. It'll be interesting to see the numbers next year, how those change, but it's a really bright future, I'd say.
You're doing good.
And that's
Doing
why
good.
Twitch is not just a gaming platform anymore. Twitch is an entertainment platform, which is helping creators like you
Mhm.
create all new entertainment businesses.
Yeah, and maybe I didn't make it clear in my presentation. So I started on Twitch, but with my deal with Facebook, I'm now live streaming exclusively over on Facebook. So I don't touch Twitch anymore. I've signed a year contract with them. 1 year, I'm on the platform. I have to fulfill so many hours a month live streaming. I'm still able to post my videos, but any live content that I do has to exclusively be on Facebook. So there's a lot of other companies that are doing that as well and trying to, gain traction from, influencers and content creators bringing their audiences over to other platforms.
And the platforms are fighting over creators.
Yeah.
and influencers.
Yep, exactly.
That's a big part of the business.
Yep.
Bob,
That's all
Bob,
entertainment.
who do you think is going to win among the platforms? Or what directions are they heading? Magnus was mentioning Microsoft. Jake was mentioning Facebook, Twitch.
Well, there's no question
They're all gonna
that Microsoft and Sony are going to continue to be the leaders in terms of platforms. And Amazon, you have the Tencent Alibaba side and Amazon-owned companies, and they may be different companies, but they're all owned by Alibaba in some way, shape, or form, or they're all owned by Amazon in some shape or form, or Sony in some shape or form, or Microsoft. And so and Google keeps trying to get involved here and there, but those are your main players. And there's lots of great ecosystems that come from all of them. And you're also seeing, not so much in the gaming space, but you're seeing a big push coming from Roku all of a sudden, entering the space, and they're very successful at it. Jonah, do you want to?
Yeah, I was just going to say that the success and the real answer is they're all going to win. And it'll be a matter of just like, a game of Monopoly, which cards are they going to take? So Microsoft is for sure going to dominate North America in terms of subscriber service, in my opinion. Facebook is not being looked at as well as they should be because they are going to own the future of VR. Not really. When I say that, I mean middle class to lower middle class VR, meaning entry level VR, which is incredibly important. And they will also probably own the emerging markets because Facebook is not that popular in America, but guess where it is popular? Pretty much every other emerging market that's not here. And so when they have their streaming service that's coming out soon for games, they can sell at a very low point, let's say $5, $2 a month, maybe even free to play. You can play our free gaming service. You just have to make a profile, which means they're going to harness your data, which will then generate more revenue. Sony for sure will always have a dominance because they're like, the movie, they're like the Warner Brothers of gaming where they make some of the best movies, AKA games. There's always going to be an audience for that. The one I am concerned with that I worry in terms of gaming, they'll do fine in entertainment is Google. Their strategy with Stadia, in my opinion, was a disaster. However, they do own the biggest platform ever, which is YouTube, and they could easily reintegrate Stadia into YouTube as a part of their service, which they started doing this week. So they could turn it around.
Remember, Jonah, we had this discussion a couple weeks, the lawsuit against Apple, and I guess, and Google, but they do have their strengths on the mobile devices. And so I don't know if are you seeing any shifts from desktop to mobile?
So there's a very interesting, and I'll mention this, and again, I don't want to take up all the space. I know panelists here are as qualified as me and can definitely answer this question, but the issue with Apple and Epic Games is the fact that with Apple's system, which is very closed circuit, meaning they own all the picks and shovels, they own all the levers, they take a cut of everything you ever do. They want 30% of your game. That's a lot of money. But at the same time, if you're not on Apple, you pretty much can't make a good mobile game that will make any money. So you're really stuck at a crossroads. That's going to be going on for a couple years. But Microsoft has done something really intelligent that may force Apple to open up the entire library or their system because they won't have a choice. So what happens is with Microsoft's new cloud gaming platform, Game Pass, the one that I think is going to be doing very well in the future, they said, fine, we can't access your app store. I guess they can't download the app. We'll just tell all of your iOS users to use the in-browser version. And so now, if I want to buy Game Pass and I have Apple and I desperately want to play these better games, I can just use the web browser version, which they have no control over. So what's going to happen in the next few years is Apple's going to say, okay, Microsoft started an issue. Now Epic Games and all the other companies are going to follow. We're going to have to integrate them into our app system, lower our fees a little bit, and also come up with our own device and our own product that competes against them in order to take market share. So I think that's what's going to happen. I'm sure my panelists, Lance especially, we talk about this all day, like military strategists, who we think is going to make the next move. So I know Lance is probably biting at the chance to answer this question.
Yeah, no, I mean, Jonah and I talk about this quite often. We have little 20, 30-minute calls just talking about random things happening in the gaming space. But, you know, one thing, he hit everything right on the money, but one thing that's the most important is that whoever owns the best IP, I mean, the gaming community and just gaming overall, whether it's a mobile game, whether it's a console, whether it's a PC game, it's all about the community that's behind it. And it's about the game actually being good, believe it or not. You can't shove a bad product down our throat. We'll see right through the BS. So if you look at who owns some of the best IP right now, Sony has overwhelmingly some of the best IP out there from their entire catalog of games. So right now you're going to see over the next 5 years, 3 years, you'll see a big push by these big boys starting to buy as much IP as possible. And it's already started. They've already bought a number of different studios to go and buy the IP that they have. Now it's just going to be about, can they buy that IP, take on that debt load, and also subsidize the free user acquisition by making it free to get that user acquisition for their games. And that's what's going to be really interesting. And I think that, you know, Sony is just far out ahead. And then one more thing regarding the Epic investment. You need to remember who Epic has one of their biggest investors by. And really it's a political issue in which that they're trying to really gain a lot of control that Apple has within the entire global market. And if Epic Games has to go and lose a little bit of money from mobile revenue for a period of time, and then they can just come back and maybe pay it in the end, that's a worthwhile investment to see, well, how mad are really American companies at Apple and what they've been doing? And can we, you know, poke a stick and flame the fire a little bit to see what we can do and what we can cause in terms of controversy. So that's one issue to also keep a note with that whole issue.
Yeah, 100% agree. And I would also say Apple has to be very careful about how they treat gamers, because gamers are a reactive audience. They're not a passive audience. So when we revolt against the thing, we straight up just don't buy their product, and it can really damage a company. So they have to be very careful about how they pitch product to us. I would also say that Apple is starting to lose their grandeur in a sense that, go look at the stock. People weren't that excited about this year's iPhone or their new ARM computers. They just weren't. But then you have Samsung, who's partnering exclusively with Microsoft to generate the best possible games on mobile. And you look at all these other companies that are pretty big. They're not Apple big, but they'll get there. You know, Apple better be very careful and realize that just because they're the belle of the ball does not mean, you know, that's going to last forever unless they start making some real movements.